Well, hello, Science Module Development Team. This is Greg Sherman, the Instructional Design Project Manager, and I'm here to present a very brief video, and a very quick video on the revised development guide that has been developed and the revised template that you should be using moving forward in your development efforts. And by way of really helping you understand the revisions, I'm going to walk you through a revised module that I took and put into the new template. And one of the things you're going to notice about it is that things have been simplified quite a bit. And that was a result of reviewing everybody's first drafts for their first modules. So we reviewed 9 different modules. And there were some common issues that hopefully will be addressed in the revised format that we're going to have. One of the issues is that there were a lot of really good examples that were of activities that were provided, but not everything was structured in an inquiry-based 5E approach. And part of that was just the way the lesson template was arranged, and so hopefully that's been addressed. And another important issue was sort of an understanding that certain OER materials sort of needed to be included in the experience, and that's not necessarily true. And that's probably our fault for not communicating clearly enough the fact that the biggest OER thing that's happening with these projects is that you're developing something that will be an open educational resource for other educators. And that could include other resources that you integrate into it, but primarily it is your experience that you are defining that will become the OER and that will address specific Virginia outcomes for science. And that's why it will be so valuable to Virginia teachers. So I'm going to walk you through now the revised development guide, and then I'm going to show you how it was applied to revise one of the projects that was submitted for the initial draft. And so here we go. And again, this is going to go kind of fast, but one of the reasons why I want to make sure that I do this is that you get a sense of what this is before we meet, and that you can have some questions ready to go in advance before we meet. And also, if for some reason you can't meet online with your other team members, this video will help you understand what is expected of you moving forward. So here I am in our in the development guide, and let me just show you where this is located. Just remind you where this is located. So here I am in in my sort of project folder in Google, and I'm going to open up the OER curriculum projects. That's the folder that is shared with you, I believe. And I've organized these into the 3 different sets of projects, and I'm going to go back one and just let you know that this revised guide, is located in this folder. We have there's 2 documents that are revised. There's the revised template document, the OER module plan template, and there is also the overall development guide that is revised, and that would be this one right here. So that's the one that we're looking at right here, and I'm going to zoom in to 125 so you can see it a little more closely. And let me just walk you through the steps of this, or what the parts are. Once again, I kept the link to the Google space. There's information about the teams. Our timeline is here, and so far we're fairly on track. We're a little bit behind, but that's okay. We want to be able to create everything before August so that we can upload things into the new system by August. So we're not doing that badly. We still list the needs of areas, high need areas. Still put some resources for OER resources if you need it. Then we get into the revised design template. And again, this has been simplified tremendously. You're going to still include your module cover image. You're going to introduce the module. You're then going to provide instructions over your module. And one thing you're going to see in the example that I provide is that the module focuses on covering all of the 5 E's. And those 5 E's might be addressed within one large lesson that constitutes the entire module, or you might have separate lessons that address one or more parts to the 5E. But the main re-emphasis or refocus is on making sure that your lesson takes the learners through all 5 E's to help them learn your targeted skills. And then there's a review, and then you include an assessment with actual items. And again, I'm going to show you an example of this. And then you summarize the culturally responsive teaching strategies. And that is it. And I revised the module development process because it's been simplified quite a bit. And the only appendices that you need now going forward are information about the learning cycle approach, or the 5E approach. And I include some information that helps support you and helps you better understand what those parts are. And then there are different types of learning cycles, and I provide information about the 3 different types of learning cycles. But all of that addresses the 5E model. And then there is Appendix B, which is just some information about scaffolds if you need to understand that concept better. And then there is the culturally responsive teaching innovation configuration rubric, the rubric that is used to help you summarize which aspects of culturally responsive teaching are addressed in your experience. And again, I'm going to show you a good example of this. So, and that's it. Those are the only appendices. This cut down the guide quite a bit. So let me show you an example of how we applied this guide or the revised model to one of the modules. So I am going to go to Teresa's initial draft of passive and active cell transport, her module on passive and active cell transport that was submitted. This is the initial draft using our original plan. And so this is the one that I picked in order to revise. It's in the biology folder. So I guess Teresa wins because she doesn't have to revise much. She has a few things to do to revise this, but I picked it because it was already very well formed and it was very well organized, and I really could understand where she was, what she was trying to accomplish overall with this module. So you'll notice that she does have her module image. She does provide a good overview. There's tags and all of that. Then she gets into the introduction, and she addresses all of the elements that were included in the module overview. But I think I was asking for too many things, like the role of the instructor. All of that is good, but I really want to simplify this so that the work that you're doing actually is the actual material that will be uploaded when we're done with all of this. So I included a few notes, and then she has something that she says lesson 1, and then she does the distinct introduction, activities, practice, feedback, and review. And one problem that I had, and this was not Teresa's problem, but it was sort of the design problem, the lesson template, is that trying to include all 5 E's in this initial set of activities didn't really work that well. It was forced. And it was much better to unpack it from a lesson. And so the module goes on, and then there's lesson 2, and it's another activity. In this case, it's really mostly an explanation where learners are given some specific, in this one, they have an opportunity to investigate the properties of cell membranes by doing this bubble activity, which again is a really good part of the lesson. And it's written up as a distinct lesson, but it really needs to dovetail better with the with the overall module. And again, that's really a design issue that was promoted initially that was a little harder to follow. And then a separate lesson that addresses the information or the term introduction phase of the 5E. So again, it didn't really quite, it was hard to make sense of all of this in the overall 5E model. And again, I'll take responsibility for that. I think the template, the initial template was, it's kind of encouraged or perpetuated that. So very good review, and then as far as module assessment, nothing was included there, and most of you didn't, and that's okay. You probably didn't quite understand the expectation here, and that's fine. So let me show you how I took this module and then reconfigured it into the new template, and I think that it will help clear a lot of things up. So now I'm going to go to the revised module plan. I'm going to zoom in on this a bit. And again, this is in the biology folder, and you can review this if you want to, up close and personal. But let me just walk through it. It has the developer here, what the module title is called, the cover image is here, because that's all part of what we're going to be uploading into the Virginia system. The tags are all there and still good. The specific Virginia SOL that is supported is included here, and that will be tagged. Then I took some information and included it in the module overview and introduction. This is all stuff that was included. If I wrote something new, included something new, then I am going to color that font green in this example. And I moved the goal to here, and I reworded it just a little bit to clarify it. And then I separated the objectives out of the goal, and I wrote them up. And so I added one that's really part of the goal, part of the Virginia SOL. And again, Teresa can review this and edit it however she thinks it needs to be revised. But these are my recommendations in green font. I did include a list of the prerequisites that are needed for this module. I was really clear about that. I think that that heading into the module, the students need to understand. They need to understand what concentration gradient means, and an understanding of diffusion and differences between atoms and molecules. They also need to have an understanding of the scientific method, and they need to understand terms such as hypothesis and the different types of variables, because they're going to be asked to design an investigation. And so I listed that as a prerequisite. There are materials listed, and again, this might need to be revised, but I listed all of the materials here that are going to be needed, including some optional materials that you might want the students to have access to if they're going to be designing something on their own. And again, other things might be added. I made a statement about the scaffolds. So I said that it might be necessary for some students to receive support in designing line graphs that communicate changes in dependent variables. I'm not sure that may or may not be necessary, depending on how the teachers choose to have the students investigate and communicate about their investigations. And if some students don't understand diffusion, there might need to be help understanding what that term means. So I wrote that as scaffolds. The teacher would want to have those available for specific students if needed. Then we get into the module instruction. And again, rather than break this up into lessons, which I don't think you need to do, I think teachers can break up distinct parts of an overall investigation into individual lessons if needed. So I just addressed explicitly the 5Es, and in the engagement section, I have again reminding students, connecting what they already know to what they're about to learn about, and then the activity that was initially included with mystery boxes, with smells that actually moved through some of the balloons, and it was a really good, very engaging activity. And so that's all part of the initial engagement, and so it was fitted here. And again, I followed up by what you would want to talk about as a teacher following that engagement activity. And another thing that I want to point out is that in some of the work that I'm doing, I do include some notes of things that might need to be continued to be revised, and so I'll put those comments in there. Then we get into the exploration phase, and this is where the learners will do one of the activities that was already designed regarding observing iodine and starch and iodine moving through a plastic baggie, which is a model for a cell membrane. And then I did list some really important questions to follow up with. That is all part of the exploration phase. That's all part of the learning cycle approach. And then we get into the explanation phase, and this is something where, again, some of the students might you might use, and Teresa, I did not actually reference the good resources that you had in your explanation phase, and that would need to be added here. I just sort of summarized it, and then I had some. I included a few open ed resources on some animations that might help explain some of the cell transport things. Then we get into the elaboration, and the elaboration follows up on that. One thing I might want to add in this, by the way, that was not part of the original. Let me go back to the exploration. One thing that was not part of the original exploration is that students will hypothesize about their observations that they made during the investigation, and then you're going to allow the students to actually design an experiment that might help them. Support a hypothesis about whether starch moves through the baggie or whether they don't move through the baggie and that kind of thing. So that's included there. Then the explanation phase, and then in the elaboration phase, this is where the students can learn more about the specific properties of cell membranes, because earlier in the module they learn about how things move through the membrane, but the elaboration gives them a chance to sort of examine more deeply what are the properties of a membrane that allow movement like that to happen. And so that's a really good elaboration of that. And then there's an evaluation, and this is really important. So I went ahead and wrote evaluation questions that measure the specific 2 outcomes for this module, and they align very, very clearly and very explicitly. And so I believe there are 8 multiple choice items. You do not have to create selected response items. You can have them be constructed response if you want to. Those are sometimes much easier to write, but I teach a lot online, and so my brain is always on trying to do the best job I can measuring skills using multiple choice. And so I wrote 8. Yeah, there's 8 good multiple choice items that align specifically to the 2 objectives. Then I summarized the review. And the last thing I did is I went to the culturally responsive teaching strategy. I went to the rubric, and I examined the experiences, and then I wrote up specifically what parts of the rubric are explicitly addressed well, and then I referenced them here. And so that's all I need to do. So you'll notice that, and I'm going to scroll back up. We have the review, we have the assessment that's developed. You have most of the material actually is what Teresa originally included. Some things are left out. And those are things that Teresa can re-examine and see whether or not they might fit, or whether she just needs to keep them out for now. But you can see by this redesign that this whole experience in terms of the module is addressing each element in each of the 5E elements. And so there's no distinct lessons, and you don't really need that. What you need is an experience, a comprehensive experience that we'll call a module that addresses each of these inquiry-based 5E approach. So that is what you are up against in your redesign efforts. And I hope that if you have any questions at all about this, especially for those of you who I didn't go and make these explicit recommendations for, if you want me to work with you individually on redoing your initial drafts, I'm happy to do that. But for now, the next step is to go in and look at the notes that I wrote originally, and then look at the new module plan and try to retool it based on this example that I provided. So again, I'll be online during the course sessions to help you answer any questions. And so if you get it, hopefully you have a chance to view this, and then just move forward from here. Again, once you wrap your head around this, I think you will see that this is actually a much easier approach. It's a little more challenging because you're asked to focus on 5E stuff, and that might be something that you're not as used to, but that definitely needs to be the structure of these really important module investigations.